Hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about stuff. Don't forget to follow me on social media. There are links in the description below. I'm going to be 9,000% honest with you. We are either about to have the craziest bull run of any market that has ever existed for the last 9,000 years, or we are being lied to. There's no in between. It's only A or B. The amount of companies who are buying up Bitcoin has gotten insane. We're not going to go over all of them, but if you've been here the last 3 months, you've heard me have this conversation with you daily. It's a little weird that we went from almost no interest in Bitcoin to having 150 companies all announcing how amazing, fantastic, awesome, cool, and what a great investment Bitcoin is. We might be lied to because at some point something has to happen, right? Do you remember around January or February, we had a lot of supply shock news. If you weren't here, we had a lot of news from companies, institutions, analytical companies. One of them is called Gotham. One of them is Chainalysis, Mike Novogratz, Michael Saylor, you name it. The name of the game was supply shock. We kept on hearing me, you, us, from all these people, from every analyst, that a supply shock was coming. The weirdest part is that they kind of gave a time frame and it was spring, which makes it even weirder because the time frame that we are getting now is between July to September, in case you missed one of those videos. The oddest part is that daily in the news, we're hearing about companies buying Bitcoin. We're hearing about companies buying XRP. We're hearing about companies buying Ether. If this news was once a week, I'd be able to understand that's 4 times a month. 30 plus times a month is when it begins to get a little weird for me. It's one thing to hear that a company is going to be buying $1 million worth of Bitcoin. It changes a little bit more when we hear that one company is buying 33 million. That's a pretty big jump. When you go from MicroStrategy announcing that they're buying $7 million, $14 million worth of Bitcoin, that's a lot. When you hear that MicroStrategy this year is raising 21 billion US dollars to buy Bitcoin, the news itself represents a price jump. You cannot have Fidelity or BlackRock announce that they're going to be buying $1 billion worth of Apple stock and have people go, I am now bearish, and then the price doesn't move anywhere. Imagine if, you shouldn't even have to imagine this. If you ever watch like financial news, a lot of times you'll hear news about mergers or some companies doing something. And when they form this new company, they're going to be buying $380 million worth of shares of a company. $380 million. You know what happens to that company's price? Before they even buy the actual stock, it rises by 14% on that day. You know what? And I think this, as far as my recollection, this also has never happened. You know what would happen? Do you know what would happen if BlackRock, Fidelity, or any company on this planet announced that they were going to be buying $21 billion worth of a company's stock? Do you know what valuation that company would have within 36 hours? It would be staggeringly ridiculous. What do they know? Why are you buying $1 billion? Why are you buying $21 billion worth of that stock? They're planning something big, and I have to be a part of it. MicroStrategy then announced they were going to be accumulating another $84 billion to buy Bitcoin. By my easy math, that's between now and the next, I think, 2 years, year and a half. That's $100 billion worth of Bitcoin. And then you might say, wait, that's what they're planning on buying. Well, back it up a little bit. MicroStrategy is in the news weekly, announcing that they just bought another $800 million worth of Bitcoin. They just bought another $1.2 billion worth of Bitcoin. They just purchased randomly on a Wednesday, they got bored, another $2.7 billion worth of Bitcoin. Are they actually buying this Bitcoin, or are we being lied to? We just heard from a multitude of other companies over the course of the last 60 days. And I dare say, if you don't believe me, I made videos on it. If I say something in a video that sounds a little off, a little odd, maybe you don't particularly believe in it, Google it. Find the information yourself to reconfirm what I just said. We've had over 30, 40, 50 companies all announcing that they're each, and I mean the numbers fluctuate, but the normal numbers are around here. A lot of companies saying we're buying $1, $3, $5, $7, $15 million worth of Bitcoin. Up here, 800 million. We're looking to buy $1 billion. We just purchased $150 million worth of Bitcoin. And I've sat there many times and I'm like, what in the world is happening? How are they able to do this? I just saw an article. Because I think everyone else is wondering, what's up? What in the world is going on? I just saw an article where an analyst, if you will, was discussing why prices in the last 6 months weren't going up, irrespective of the tariffs or anything that might have been happening in the news. He was like, well, maybe like a lot of like the earliest holders. Yeah, maybe the earliest holders, maybe they're selling their Bitcoin. No, we have the metrics for that. The only people who've been selling are retail investors, or sometimes it's mining companies. If Bitcoin's price doesn't go up, they have to sell more Bitcoin a lot of times to be able to keep the lights on. But those coins aren't flooding cryptocurrency exchanges. We're not hearing that in a given day, 1 million Bitcoin re-entered crypto exchanges. It's like 150 Bitcoin, 750 over the course of a week from multiple different cryptocurrency mining companies. The other weird part is that those coins are being bought up by these companies. They're being bought up by institutions. There are a lot of people who are also just buying spot. Not everyone is relying on OTC markets because remember the numbers that we got before. If you don't, I'll refresh your mind. 2 or 3 months ago, we got news that the amount of Bitcoin on OTC, over-the-counter market. So imagine there's the crypto exchange. Every time a buy and sell happens, we can see it. But you take some out, you put it into a briefcase over here, and then somebody walks up and says, I don't want to touch the crypto exchange. So we don't see this buy order that happens, but the buying is happening. The numbers that we got were between 150 and 180,000 Bitcoin. That's 150,000 dash 180,000 Bitcoin in total that were on over-the-counter markets between all the crypto exchanges. Now riddle me this. How are all these companies buying hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin OTC over the counter, but the OTC numbers aren't changing? You can type it. How many Bitcoin on the OTC market? You'll see a number that's going to pop up. If they're not buying OTC, they must be buying on crypto exchanges. That's also a bit odd because we heard before, remember, earlier this year, there was a company that came forward and said every $1 billion, every $1 billion worth of Bitcoin purchases moves its price up by 3 to 5%. If we've heard since January that these companies have planned on and then did purchase between 30 to 50 billion already this year, US dollars worth of Bitcoin, why didn't Bitcoin's price go up by 5% weekly? And I dare even say a good 7 to 9%. Do you remember, and I have to keep saying that because this is the news that we're always going over. Do you remember we recently had news just about BlackRock? This was before BlackRock was around like 500,000 Bitcoin or something like that. We got news that BlackRock alone, not Fidelity, not Grayscale, not all the other ones, BlackRock alone was still, every day that we heard about outflows, if you missed that part, the inflows into the Bitcoin ecosystem were constantly $80 million, $140 million, $340 million on a daily basis that were flowing into BlackRock's funds. The outflows that we heard about were maybe on that day around $4 or $12 million. People are going to sell. It happened in a market. When you have buyers, there's going to be sellers. But these were the buyers and these were the sellers. We even had another article that was talking about. It said that the amount of money that's actually being sold from the ETFs was only 5% of all the money inside of those funds. At any given time, there was only 5% of the money, so 95% was unmoved. 5% of it was actually flowing out of the thing, but then they saw a couple days later that same money would then reflow back into the actual fund. If there were only several 100,000 Bitcoin previously that were in the actual OTC markets, how did BlackRock and MicroStrategy manage to accumulate 1.2 million Bitcoin without touching the OTC markets and prices not moving since around January, February? Either all of this is taking place or we are being lied to. There is no real in between. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter getting quite angry recently because of the state of the market. While we might have good days, we have never, mathematically, we've never had this much attention and money paid to and thrown at the cryptocurrency space. How many times this year have we had news that BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF is the best performing ETF ever? Not this season, not this quarter, not this year, ever. If you get a chance, Google it. Type in BlackRock Bitcoin ETF best performing ever. You're going to see a smorgasbord of news about this particular topic. The amount of crypto on crypto exchanges continues to decline. On spot markets, like within the crypto exchange, not within the briefcase. I'm holding a briefcase if you didn't know what that was. We had news before that the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges is like dropping dramatically. Remember, we heard news Bitcoin has never been this low on exchanges since 2019, 2018. We heard it recently about Ethereum. It hasn't been this low since the coin was created. I've been seeing a lot of people finally beginning to question a lot of the things that are going on because something is happening. I understand that it might be possible to manipulate the market through futures, maybe through ETFs, maybe through this and that and so. I've heard it all. But also logic. If there's only so much Bitcoin, because the original theory was the market's not moving because people are buying OTC. So I said, okay, zip, threw it away. And then 4 months later, here I am again. And I said, okay, cool. So according to logic and the numbers that we've been getting from all of these companies who've been popping up and announcing that they're buying all this Bitcoin. Don't forget, even what's their face? Metaplanet. Metaplanet had 800 Bitcoin, then 1,000, then 2,000, then 10,000. Now they're working their way this year to 100,000 coins. If Metaplanet buys all the coins OTC, and I mean the last 50,000 goes to MicroStrategy, who's typically buying 50,000 a month, that means there's no more OTC. You might then say, well, they'll take more. No, stop. I want to know what's actually going on. I want to know who's actually. Did you see the thing? This must have been 6 weeks ago. MicroStrategy announced that they had bought more Bitcoin. Lovely. Then someone asked Michael Saylor while he was sitting on a panel, can you tell us what the addresses are? A lot of people were, not even lightly divided. A lot of people don't really understand what Bitcoin and crypto are about. And at the core of it, it has to do with transparency. There's a reason why we have a blockchain and not a piece of paper that we're passing around to each other. The point of the blockchain is for transparency, for everyone to know there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. A company stands up and says, we have 1 million Bitcoin. Show us. This isn't the banking system. Show us that you actually have what you say that you have. Michael Saylor then came forward on the thing and was like, no, I don't agree with that. It's dangerous. He said dangerous for security or something like that, which also makes no sense because those coins are on chain. You can't grab at the blockchain and go, I got them. I got the coins. And also, this is a very wealthy company. We can only assume that their coins are custodied in a mountain or with Coinbase. They're somewhere secure, excuse my French, AF. Then the analytical company actually went through the blockchain and they found 85% of the coins they said they had. And then it was 90. And the last I saw, it was 97.5. As there's been no discussion since then, I assume the number's 100%. I can assume that all coins are accounted for with MicroStrategy. And every time they announce a purchase, people can see those. Like the idea of saying no, and I mean from like a larger standpoint, we're not talking about 2 Bitcoin. We're not talking about 16 Bitcoin that one company might have bought years ago. We're talking about you declaring that all the remaining, the 6 million Bitcoin that's lost and gone forever, that you have almost 10% of the entire supply right now and you're aiming for 1 million. You got to prove that. You can't sit there. We're not in this world where, banks and blah, blah. No. The point of crypto, the entire idea for governments owning crypto as well, has always been this idea of transparency. Governments don't like transparency because they want to be able to lie. But the idea of, you heard how like Bitcoin's digital gold? The idea of Bitcoin being digital gold comes down to, if a government says that they own 100,000 Bitcoin, in the future, they'll be able to issue a new currency similar to gold based off of how much Bitcoin they have. So for that 100,000 Bitcoin, you can issue X amount of new fiat currency. You can't just start issuing new money because we know exactly how much Bitcoin you have. Why are you inflating this new thing that you said was going to be based off of Bitcoin? It has to do with transparency in the system. I can't tell you that I have X amount of coins and then you have to simply believe me. No, that's not. The point of this space is transparency and trust at the exact same time. They work together, rotating in unison. I have a lot of questions as to what's been happening. A lot of these companies, if not all of them, except for GameStop, when they announce that they're going to buy Bitcoin, their stock price goes up. When they announce that they just bought more Bitcoin, their stock price goes up by 400%. This wasn't meant to be a tinfoil hat kind of video in any way, but I really understand when I said and I say years ago, we would have a company announce, we are looking at Bitcoin. We might buy some. Prices would rise by 15% on that day off of speculation of someone buying, thinking about buying. If we heard that this company was getting into the space and at some point they were going to be mining Bitcoin, we didn't even have the idea of a treasury 2-3 years ago. This company bought how many Bitcoin? Bitcoin's price would skyrocket. Do you remember when it was announced that Tesla owned, was it 11,000 Bitcoin, and the price went crazy? That's 11,000. BlackRock has 600,000. 600,000. MicroStrategy has 600,000. Metaplanet is raising $5.4 billion. There's a company daily who is announcing anywhere from 50 million to 100 million. We've had a handful of companies out the gate. We're raising $1 billion. We raised $1 billion. We just bought $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. I run to see prices. Prices are down by 2%. The craziest part of all of this is that the amount of Bitcoin on crypto exchanges is actually falling. How are you able to buy Bitcoin, not over the counter, but we see crypto exchange supply drying up rapidly, throwing us towards this world of supply shock, and we're still below $300,000. This is a real question to ask yourself. What is going on? It's interesting to have the theory that old purchasers might be selling off their coins, but that doesn't equate to the buying that we've seen. The original people who bought Bitcoin years ago, the original holders who might be selling off, these people aren't selling off 3 million Bitcoin because it would have been in the news. It's cool that you might be able to manipulate prices with futures, but at some point you also have the situation where a handful of companies in a year and a half have purchased several million Bitcoin. So what's the answer? Is all of this actually happening, or are we being lied to? I don't think there's an in-between. Something really weird is happening within this space. And I told you months ago, this was months ago, before I told you in July, I said July is going to be a really pivotal point because we've heard so much about accumulation. We've heard so much about buying. I said prices need to move because what I think a lot of people don't understand, or maybe don't want to understand, is that a lot of retail is quite fatigued with the market. On top of that, people are losing their jobs. They have no place to live. They have no money coming in. There's often this idea of when prices pump, we then see retail rush into the market. With what money? They're doing other stuff and they're wondering about like actual real world, real life things right now. Even people within crypto are also like mentally cashing out. So I still hold my theory. July, something has to happen, or we're probably in a bear market. It's not meant to scare you. It's not meant to whatever. I've been in this market for so long. I've been in this market for almost a decade. I've gone through multiple cycles, multiple bull runs. We have had movement in this market by someone sneezing heavily and saying the word Bitcoin. You mean to tell me hundreds of millions of tens of billions, $100 billion has flown into this market and prices haven't reacted the way that every analyst said that they would? There's not that much selling in the world, especially when the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges continues to rapidly drop. We'll see what happens. I wonder, this is a real thing. I haven't seen any news, zero news from any other analytical company looking into the actual purchases of these companies. You can't all own 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 Bitcoin and then not affected the OTC market and also not caused prices to rise. I am 8,000% serious. What in the world is going on in this market? There's no way. We have never had this much attention. We've never had this much money pushed into the market. Even before, remember when we first got the Bitcoin ETFs? We heard all this news every time BlackRock purchased. This was after Grayscale was done selling from their fund. Every time we got news that BlackRock purchased, we moved up from 16,000 to 79,000 Bitcoin or something like that. And that took about 6 months in 2024. Since then, we've had over 120 companies, multiple countries, and central banks, Google that one as well, actively buying Bitcoin or buying Bitcoin through the ETFs, which then has to be purchased spot by BlackRock. Either all of it's true, or this is one gigantic illusion that we're all living through. Well, I think that's going to do it for this video. Was not meant to be super dramatic. Between all the stuff that's in the news, between all the news that we're getting about economic collapse, about AI, about automation, about job losses, homes as well, the economy not doing well, personal debt flourishing, like doing absolutely incredibly well, government debt, government deficits, and then on top of that, an egregious amount of news about Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum, crypto purchases. Something feels very, very, very weird. Something feels very, very odd. Hopefully we get some answers soon, and hopefully there's an analytical company out there who will look through to see if these other companies actually did buy and how, because something feels off. I hope you got something from the video. I hope you all are having a great day. Morning, listen, this is stuff that always goes through my head, and I felt like I was crazy since around February, March. Upon hearing that the US was going to buy Bitcoin, I was like, this is it. This is the moment we've literally all been waiting for. And it just feels like silence. It feels like a literal lull in the market as we keep hearing these companies announcing this every 24 hours. What's going on? Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.